Her coffee went cold 3 hours ago, and she hadn't noticed until now. Phoebe set the mug down on the edge of her desk, the corner desk, the one nobody wanted because the radiator beside it hissed like a dying animal every 20 minutes, and stared at the spreadsheet in front of her. Column G was off by 11 cents. 11 cents. She'd been hunting it for 40 minutes. She found it. A transposition error in row 47. Someone had typed 3,847 instead of 3,874. She fixed it, saved the file, and leaned back in her chair. That was when her phone lit up with a text from her sister. "Hey, don't freak out, but I need to tell you something before you hear it from anyone else." Phoebe stared at those words for a long moment. Her sister Jade had been saying, "Don't freak out," since they were teenagers, and it had never once preceded good news. Not when she wrecked their mother's car. Not when she borrowed money she never returned. Not when she showed up at Phoebe's college graduation 3 hours late with a stranger she introduced as basically my boyfriend. She typed back, "What?" Not a question. She'd stopped making them questions a long time ago. "I'm with Cole now. Like. Together." Phoebe read it twice. Then she read it a third time, because the brain does that when it's stalling. Cole Whitman. Her boyfriend of 4 years. The man who 2 weeks ago had sat across from her at their kitchen table and talked for 45 minutes about their 5-year plan. Their 5-year plan. He'd used the word 17 times. She'd counted, because that was the kind of person she was, the kind who noticed numbers, who kept track, who built things carefully and checked her work. She typed back, "How long?" 6 months. "Phoebe, I'm sorry, it just happened." She put the phone face down on the desk. 6 months. He'd looked her in the eye for 6 months. Sat across from her at that kitchen table, said 17 times. She picked up her cold coffee, drank what was left of it, and thought, well, that's that. She was not the kind of woman who fell apart in the accounting department of a mid-sized logistics company on a Wednesday evening. She was not the kind of woman who called her friends crying or posted vague, wounded things on social media. She was the kind of woman who found the 11-cent error in column G, fixed it, saved the file, and went home. She went home. The apartment felt different immediately, the way rooms do when you know someone has been in them while you weren't. She didn't have proof. She didn't need it. 6 months is a long time. There are a lot of Wednesday evenings in 6 months. She packed a bag in 11 minutes. She was efficient. She'd always been efficient. She didn't have a plan beyond not here. She drove until the skyline thickened, until the familiar blocks fell away behind her, until she ended up in a part of the city she didn't know well. Downtown, farther south than she usually went, past the restaurants she recognized, and into the territory of places with no menus posted in the window, just a single light above the door, and the sound of something low and steady from inside. She pulled over because she was tired of driving. The bar had no name she could see. Just a carved wooden sign with what might have been a bird on it or a fist. She couldn't tell in the dark. The door was heavy, and the inside smelled like cedar and old bourbon, and something underneath both of those that she couldn't name. She sat at the bar. The bartender, a woman with close-cropped grey hair and the expression of someone who had heard everything twice, looked at her for 1 second, assessed the overnight bag on the stool beside her, and said nothing. She poured 2 fingers of rye without being asked. Phoebe drank it. Another. The woman poured it. Phoebe sat with the second glass and looked at the bottles lined up behind the bar, all that amber and gold, all that careful aging, years and years of sitting still in the dark, just waiting to become something worth drinking. She thought, I am 31 years old. I have $200 in savings. I have a rental I will have to vacate in 30 days. Or figure out how to afford a loan. I have a job I am very good at, and a sister who will eventually want to talk through her feelings about this, and a mother who will say something that sounds like sympathy but functions as blame. She thought, I have a cold cup of coffee I forgot to drink, and an 11-cent error I fixed, and a 5-year plan that belonged to someone else the whole time. She ordered a third drink. That was when the man sat down beside her. He didn't announce himself. He didn't perform sitting down. He simply appeared in the space to her left the way large, expensive objects appear in rooms, as if they had always been there and you simply hadn't noticed. He was wearing a suit the color of charcoal, no tie, collar open. His hands, when he set them on the bar, had the particular stillness of someone who had learned a long time ago not to fidget. There was a scar along the left side of his jaw. Old and clean. Not an accident scar. A deliberate scar, or at least a scar from something that had been deliberate. The bartender looked at him and went to get something Phoebe didn't see her pour. "You're in my seat," he said. Phoebe looked at the stool she was sitting on. Then she looked at the stools on either side of her. 2 empty, both of them. "There are 11 other stools at this bar," she said. "I'm aware. Then sit in one of those." He looked at her for the first time. Not a quick look, not the kind men used as punctuation, an actual look, the kind that categorizes. She felt the weight of it and did not blink. "You've been crying," he said. "I have not. You look like someone who has been not crying very aggressively for several hours." She turned back to her drink. "That's your best material." He almost smiled. She could tell by the way something shifted at the corner of his mouth without quite arriving as an expression. "Reeves," he said. Not introduction. Just the word. She waited. "That's my name, Phoebe," she said, because she was raised to be polite even when she didn't feel like it. "What happened?" he asked. "None of your business." "Fair enough." He was quiet for a while. The bar moved around them in the way bars do. Low voices, the clink of glass, someone laughing at the far end in a way that sounded expensive. Men came and went from the back of the room. They didn't look at her. They looked at him in the brief, calibrated way that meant something she didn't pass yet. "My boyfriend," she said eventually, and hated herself a little for it. 6 months. Reeves said nothing. "They're sorry," she added. "Apparently it just happened." "Things don't just happen," he said. "No." She finished her drink. "They don't." He looked at her again, that same weighing look. "What do you do?" "Accounting." "Do you like it?" "I'm good at it," she said. "Which is different." Something moved in his expression. A fractional thing. She had the sense she'd said something that caught him off guard, though she couldn't have said how she knew. "It is different," he agreed. She ordered another drink. He didn't try to stop her or comment on it. She appreciated that. Cole would have commented. Cole would have said, "Don't you think you've had enough?" in that measured way that felt like concern and functioned as control. "I need to find somewhere to stay tonight," she said. Not to him. To the bar, really. To herself. "I have a hotel," Reeves said. She looked at him. "I own one," he said, with the flat patience of someone correcting a misunderstanding before it fully formed. 11 blocks, if you need a room." "I don't take things from strangers. It's not a gift," he said. "It would be a transaction. I'll put it on a tab. You can settle it when you like." She studied him. The scar, the stillness of his hands, the way the other men in the room had not once looked at her but had looked at him in that small, constant way, the way iron filings orient to something magnetic. She was not naive. She had grown up in a part of this city where you learned early to read rooms, to understand weight and hierarchy, to know which men could have things made to go badly and which men couldn't. She knew what she was looking at. "I know what you are," she said. "Most people don't say it out loud. I'm not most people." He looked at her for a long moment. "No," he said, "you're not." The hotel was the kind of place that didn't have a sign out front either. Just a number on a brushed steel door and a lobby that felt like someone had built a room inside a very old secret. The man at the front desk looked at Reeves, and then looked at Phoebe, and then looked at Reeves again with an expression so carefully neutral it was its own kind of signal. "1 room," Reeves said. "Adjacent to mine." "Of course." She was shown to a room on the 14th floor. King bed, blackout curtains, a bathroom with heated floors and towels folded into geometric shapes she almost didn't want to disturb. On the desk by the window, a notepad, a pen, and a small card that read, "If you need anything," with a number handwritten beneath. She sat on the edge of the bed and thought, "This is the strangest Wednesday of my life." Then she thought, "I found the 11-cent error, though." She slept better than she'd expected to. In the morning, there was breakfast outside her door, not delivered through the door, left outside it, on a small table she hadn't noticed the night before, as if the hotel itself had anticipated the need. Coffee, actual coffee, and something with eggs that was still warm in a way that suggested the timing had been planned. She ate it in the doorway, standing, looking at the hallway. At 8:43, the door to the adjacent room opened. Reeves looked at her eating breakfast in her doorway with no particular expression. He was wearing charcoal again, a different suit, same absence of tie. She wondered if he owned ties. She suspected he owned dozens and had chosen at some point to stop wearing them. "Slept?" he asked. She looked at the breakfast. "Thank you for this. I didn't do it. You didn't not do it." Again, that almost smile. "I have a meeting," he said. "My driver can take you wherever you need to go. I have a car. You left it outside a bar you don't know, in a part of the city you don't know." He paused. "It's been moved. It's in our garage." She set down her fork. "You moved my car. It would have been towed. You moved my car," she said again. "I can have it brought wherever you'd like." She looked at him. He looked back. There was something maddeningly reasonable about his expression, the kind of calm that came not from ease but from a life in which most things that could go wrong had already gone wrong and had been managed. "I don't like things being done without my knowledge," she said. Noted, he didn't apologize. She found she didn't mind. "I need to get some things from my apartment," she said. "And I need to figure out a sublet." He was quiet for a moment. "How long do you have?" 30 days. Joint lease. We'll have to figure out." She stopped. She had said "we" by accident, and the word sat in the hallway like something dropped. Reeves waited. "I'll figure it out," she said. "My property manager handles 22 buildings in this city," he said. "If you're looking for something in your price range, she can accelerate the search." "I don't know your property manager." "You don't know me either," he said. "And yet here you are eating breakfast in my hotel." That was fair. She didn't intend to stay more than 3 days. She stayed for 3 weeks. It wasn't one thing. It was the accumulation of small practical things, each one reasonable enough on its own. The property manager, a brisk woman named Audra, who wore her efficiency like armor, found her 3 options within 48 hours. But 2 of them needed work Phoebe couldn't supervise, while also going back to the apartment, to sort through 4 years of accumulated, shared life. And the third was available immediately but required first, last, and deposit simultaneously, which cleared her savings entirely, which meant she'd be threading the needle very tightly until the next paycheck, which meant she'd have no margin for. "Stay until the 1st, Reeves said the morning of day 3, in the same flat practical tone he used for everything. "The room is not being used. It's a waste of resources to have you pay for something else when the problem resolves in 3 weeks. "I'm not charity," she said. "I don't do charity," he said. "I told you, it's a tab. You'll settle it." "With what?" He looked at her, that weighing look she'd come to recognize as his particular form of attention. "I'll think of something." She should have pushed back harder on that. She knew it even then, but she was tired. The specific, layered exhaustion of someone who had been holding things together for so long that the suggestion of not having to, just temporarily, just for 3 weeks, felt like setting down a stone she'd forgotten she was carrying. She stayed. In the 2nd week, she found the error. She wasn't looking for it. She'd been at the small desk in her room, working on her own files. The logistics company paid her well enough. She was thorough. She was competent. When Reeves had knocked, which was new, he'd been leaving things outside her door. Coffee, reports, once a single page of numbers with a question mark at the top. She'd answered the question mark, slid the page back under his door, and thought nothing more of it. This time he knocked. "I need someone to look at something," he said when she opened it. "What kind of something?" He didn't answer directly. He simply held out a ledger, an actual paper ledger, the old kind, columns and columns in a careful hand. She took it. She looked at it for about 90 seconds. Then she said, "Your depreciation schedule for the Western warehouses is off. Someone has been skimming the calculation to flatten the liability column." She turned to page 7. "Here, and here, and here. It's been running for at least 14 months. Reeves looked at her for a long moment. "I've had 3 accountants look at that," he said. "Then your accountants are either incompetent or involved," she said. The pattern is not subtle if you know what you're looking at. He was quiet. Do you want me to run the full reconciliation? She asked. Yes, he said. I'd like that very much. She told herself she was doing it because she was bored. She told herself it was just a puzzle, just columns and rows, just the satisfying mechanism of finding where the numbers stopped telling the truth. She was good at this. It was the thing she was good at, separate from whether she liked it. She was also not foolish enough to pretend she didn't know what the ledgers represented. 14 months of skimming from a man like Reeves meant someone had been very brave or very stupid, and it meant there would be consequences that didn't happen in conference rooms or HR offices. She found the full scope of it in 4 days. 3 individuals, coordinated, methodical. She laid it out in a single document, no commentary, just the numbers and what they showed. She slid it under his door on a Thursday morning. He knocked on her door at noon. You know what this means, he said. I know what it means for your books, she said. I'm not asking what it means beyond that. He studied her. Most people would ask. I'm not most people. She'd said that before. It still felt true. No, he said. You're not. He stood in her doorway for a moment longer, which was unusual. Reeves did not stand in doorways. He moved through spaces with the directional certainty of someone who had long ago stopped hesitating. I'd like to offer you a position, he said. She looked at him. Not what you're thinking, he said. What am I thinking? Something dramatic, he said. What I mean is, I need an actual accountant, not a front. Someone who can do what you just did and can be trusted to do it without involving anyone else. She was quiet. The compensation would be, he named a number. She kept her face very still. It was 4 times her current salary. And the nature of the work, she said carefully. Books, he said. Numbers. Finding what I just showed you before it has time to compound. He paused. The other aspects of my business are not your problem, and when they become my problem, they won't. That's not an answer. Another pause. That fractional shift at the corner of his mouth. You are very difficult, he said. You want someone accurate, she said. Accurate people are difficult. I'm aware. He looked at her. Think about it. She thought about it for 6 hours. She made a list, actual paper, 2 columns. She was aware the list was somewhat absurd given what was in the left column. She was aware that the version of herself who had sat in the accounting department of a mid-sized logistics company and fixed the 11-cent error in column G would find the list alarming. That version of herself had also believed in a 5-year plan. She knocked on his door at 8 in the evening. I have conditions, she said. He opened the door wider. Come in. His suite was nothing like her room. It was larger, obviously, but that wasn't the thing. It was the paper. Every surface had paper on it. Not messy, never messy, but dense with notation, with maps and figures, and what looked like architectural drawings alongside columns of numbers that she recognized immediately, and others she didn't. It was the room of someone who managed a great deal and trusted no one else to manage it. She understood this instinctively. She had always managed things alone. Your conditions, he said. She sat in the chair across from the desk that was covered in paper. He remained standing. She had noticed he often remained standing when they talked, as if sitting down was a form of concession he wasn't ready to make. I don't do anything that isn't numbers, she said. That's the first one. Agreed, I keep my own records. I don't hand over my working documents unless I choose to. He was quiet for a moment. Agreed, and if I find something that I determine crosses a line I'm not willing to cross. You tell me directly, he said, before anyone else. She studied him. That's not quite what I was going to say. I know what you were going to say. He sat down then, finally in the chair behind the desk, and she had the sudden sense that she'd passed something without knowing what the test was. You were going to say you walk, and you can. That's not a condition I need you to state, because it's true regardless. She was quiet. I need someone who can find what you found, he said. I don't need someone who is afraid to leave. Those people miss things. They make the work fit the answer they think I want. He looked at her directly. You don't do that. No, she said. I don't. They looked at each other across the paper-covered desk. There's one more thing, she said. Tell me, I'm going to need a better coffee situation. The stuff outside my door in the morning is from a machine somewhere. I can tell by the mineral taste." There was a long pause. Reeves said, "I'll have it addressed." "Thank you," she said. She held out her hand. He looked at it for just a moment, something she might have imagined moving across his face, something that was not quite surprise and not quite its absence. Then he shook it. His grip was exactly what she expected. Firm, brief, no performance. "Phoebe, Reeves," she said. The coffee improved the next morning. She discovered this the way she discovered most things, by examining the evidence. Different paper cup, different smell, heat that sustained itself longer. She looked it up. It was from a place 12 blocks away that opened at 5:30 a.m. Someone had gotten up early to get it. She sat with this information for a while. Then she opened the ledgers and got to work. The work was strange and also not strange. Numbers were numbers. Columns were columns. The ledgers told the same kinds of stories all ledgers told. Where things came from and where they went. What was real and what was being made to look real. Who had access and who had used it. The gap between what someone claimed and what the record showed. She had been reading these stories her whole career. The context had simply changed. She was good at separating context from content. Cole had always said she was cold, that she didn't let things affect her the way they should. She had spent a long time wondering if he was right. She thought now that he had been wrong. She wasn't cold. She was precise. There was a difference. There were 3 people who came and went from Reeves's suite with any regularity. Dax, who was very large and said almost nothing. A woman called Ingrid, who handled things Phoebe didn't ask about and wore suits that cost more than Phoebe's monthly rent. And a man named Pryor, who handled the legal architecture of the business and looked at Phoebe the first 3 times he saw her with an expression she recognized. The particular evaluation of someone trying to figure out what she was to Reeves and coming up empty. On the 4th occasion, she said, "I'm the accountant." He blinked. "Sorry, that's the look you're giving me," she said. "You're trying to figure out what I am. I'm the accountant." Pryor looked at Reeves, who was across the room looking at something else. "She's the accountant," Reeves confirmed without looking up. Pryor nodded slowly. He didn't ask further questions. She respected that. 6 weeks in, she found the second problem. It was not inside Reeves's books. It was in the adjacent ledger, the one that tracked the agreements with the men who operated in adjacent territories. The arrangements that kept everything stable, the careful geometry of who owed what to whom and when. She'd been given access to reconcile a discrepancy in the shared accounts. The discrepancy was not a discrepancy. It was a message. Someone was skimming from both sides, from Reeves's column and from the column of the man called Aldrin, and the skimming was structured so that when it was finally found, it would look like Reeves's people had been taking from Aldrin's side. It was designed to be discovered at exactly the moment it would do the most damage. She sat with this for a long time. She thought about her conditions. She thought about the words "crosses a line I'm not willing to cross." She thought about Reeves saying, "You tell me directly." She knocked on his door at 10 in the evening. He answered immediately. He was still in the charcoal suit, though it was late. She had begun to wonder if he ever stopped working. "Someone is trying to start a war," she said, "by running a fraud through your books that's designed to look like you started it." He was very still. "I can show you," she said. "The whole pattern. It's in the numbers." He stepped back from the door. She walked in. She showed him. Every page, every column, every calculated misdirection. He sat across from her at the paper-covered desk and watched her work through it and said nothing, which was how she knew he was following every word, because Reeves asked questions when he was confused, and Reeves was not confused. When she finished, he sat back. "The source," he said. She turned to the last page. "The access pattern points to 2 people, one on your side, one on Aldrin's. They're working in tandem. The coordination is in the timing. Look at the dates." She traced the column. 7 days apart, consistently. That's not coincidence. That's a schedule. He looked at the page for a long time. "How long until this was meant to surface?" he said. 3 weeks, maybe 4, before the quarterly settlement. He was quiet. Then You said the access pattern points to 2 people. Yes, not 3 accountants this time, he said. She understood what he meant. She was the only one who'd seen this. No, she said. He nodded once. Thank you, he said. It was only 2 words, but they landed differently than she expected. Not good work the way a manager says it, not the brisk professional acknowledgement she was used to, but something that had weight behind it, the kind of thanks that cost something to give. She stood to leave. Phoebe, he said. She turned. He looked at her from across the desk, in the room full of paper, with the scar along his jaw and his hands still on the table, and he said, You didn't have to bring this to me tonight. You could have waited. You could have left it until morning. I know, she said. Why didn't you? She thought about it honestly, which was the only way she knew how to think about things. Because it was urgent, and because, she paused, because it was the right thing to do. And I've been doing the right thing my whole life and not always getting much back for it, so I've stopped expecting anything back for it. But I still do it. He looked at her for a long moment. I'm aware, he said, that this situation is not normal. My situation hasn't been normal for 2 months, she said. No. Something moved in his expression, something she couldn't fully name. I want you to know that whatever arrangement we have, the room, the work, it's not contingent, not on anything. You can leave tomorrow and the tab disappears and no one follows you. She studied him. That's a strange thing to say. I have a lot of people around me who are there because they don't have a better option, he said. I'm aware of what that does to people. I'd prefer you to stay because it's useful to you, not because you feel trapped. She was quiet for a moment. I'm not trapped, she said. I'm the one who fixed the 11-cent error and drove to a bar I didn't know and told a Mafia boss to sit somewhere else. Trapped is not really my situation. That almost smile again, closer to the surface than usual. No, he said. It's really not. She moved into the apartment Audra had found, the one with first, last, and besosset, 6 after she'd planned to. She didn't move very far. The apartment was 4 blocks from the hotel. She had not planned this. She had looked at the options and picked the one that made sense financially, and it had turned out to be 4 blocks away, and she had decided not to think too hard about what that meant. She went to the hotel every morning. She worked at the desk in what had become, functionally, her office. Reeves had cleared a room off the main suite, had a proper desk brought in, had solved the coffee situation more permanently with a machine that was not from a machine. She found things. She fixed things. She built the kind of layered documentation that would let the books withstand scrutiny from any direction. She was very good at it. Pryor had stopped looking at her with that evaluating expression. Dax, who said very little, had begun nodding at her when she passed, which she'd come to understand was his version of considerable warmth. Ingrid had handed her a takeout menu one afternoon with the words, "The lamb dumplings are the only thing worth ordering," which Phoebe had taken as the offering it was. She was not naive about any of it. She knew what she was doing and for whom. She was precise, not cold. The morning everything clarified. It was raining. She came in with her coat wet and her coffee, actual coffee, from the place 12 blocks away. She'd started getting it herself, and found Reeves standing at the window of the main suite with his back to the room. She'd seen him like this before. It meant something had gone wrong overnight. She set her things down and opened her laptop and waited. After a while, he turned. "The 2 individuals from the pattern," he said. "Yes, they've been addressed." She nodded. She did not ask what that meant. "There's a meeting with Aldrin's people this afternoon," he said, "to confirm there's no residual problem. They've asked that someone come who can explain the financial documentation." She looked up from her laptop. "They want a number person," he said. "You want me to go to a meeting with Aldrin's people," she said. "I want you to decide if you're willing to," he said. "It's not a condition of anything." She thought about it. The right thing. The thing she always did without being asked, without expecting credit. The thing that had not saved her 5-year plan or her sister's loyalty or any of the arrangements she had built carefully and seen dismantled anyway, she thought. Precision is not nothing. The 11-cent error mattered. The 14 months of skimming mattered. The fraud in the timing mattered. Numbers don't lie if you know how to read them. Numbers are the most honest thing in the room, she thought. I am 31 years old and I am very good at what I do, and I'm done making myself smaller so that other people have room to be careless. I'll need to see the full documentation before the meeting, she said. Reeves looked at her. And I'll need actual coffee, she added, not the lobby stuff. He crossed the room, picked up her coffee from where she'd set it on the desk and handed it back to her. Their hands touched briefly in the exchange. He did not move away immediately. Neither did she. The documentation will be on your desk in 20 minutes, he said. Thank you, she said. She sat down, opened the files, and got to work. Outside, the rain moved across the glass in long diagonal lines, and somewhere in the city, her sister was probably drafting an apology she'd never fully mean, and somewhere in her former apartment, Cole was probably living his 5-year plan, with someone who would not notice the 11-cent errors, who would let the columns go unexamined, because looking too closely felt impolite. Phoebe looked closely at everything. It was her best quality, and it had cost her a great deal, and she had stopped waiting for it to stop costing her. She had simply decided to be where it was worth something. The documentation arrived in 18 minutes. She had comments on the 3rd section before Reeves had fully left the room. He paused in the doorway. She did not look up. Phoebe, he said. I'm glad you sat in my seat. She looked up then. He was looking at her with the full weight of that look she had come to recognize, the one that wasn't casual, the one that cost something. You have 11 other stools, she said. I know, he said. He left. She turned back to the documentation, found a misfiled depreciation entry in section 4 that would have undermined the whole presentation, corrected it and saved the file. The rain kept moving across the glass. The coffee stayed warm. The columns told the truth, the way they always did, to anyone willing to sit still long enough to read them. She was still there at 7 o'clock. She would be there tomorrow. Not because she had nowhere else to go. She had the apartment 4 blocks away. She had the job that paid 4 times her old salary. She had Audra who could find her anything in 22 buildings. But because this was where the work was, and the work was honest, and for the first time in a long time, so was everything around it. That was enough. That was in fact more than enough. She saved the file, closed the laptop, put on her coat. On the way out, she passed Reeves in the hallway. He was on the phone, speaking in a low voice about something she didn't catch. He glanced at her as she passed. She raised her coffee cup slightly. Acknowledgement. Transaction. Receipt. She walked out into the rain and 4 blocks home and thought, well, that's that. Different from the last time she'd thought it. Not closed, not finished, but settled, level, a column that added up. She liked those best.